welcome to my third of all of the books that I've read. This one is the best of the best. Basically, these are the books that I read either in 2018 or 2019 that I just fell in love with, and I was so happy with it. Now, I found out while compiling this particular list that I actually have a lot of books that I really loved, and I'm not upset by this. It made the choosing difficult because 5-star reads are pretty easy for me to pass out as long as the story is really, really good. These books are literally the ones that I probably gush to more than 5 or 10 people about how much I love them. And I also have 4 honorable mentions. One of those honorable mentions is one that I have not even finished yet because I just loved it so much, and I'm hoping that the ending does not disappoint. I have 45 minutes left on the audiobook. So, we're going to start off with number 10, and we're going to move down the list until I get to number 2. Then I'm going to do my 4 honorable mentions, and then I will do number 1. So, here we go. So, the first one I want to talk about is Beta Test by Annabeth Albert. Mind you, this was the second book of Annabeth Albert's that I had read this year, and I was so happy when I got to it, because this follows 2 employees at the video game company that makes a game called Space Villager. This is part of Annabeth Albert's #Gamer series. And Ravi, if I remember correctly, works in design, while Tristan, who is the other character, works more in the technical side, or at least the office side of the business. And they actually start off as a little bit of an enemies to lovers situation, because Tristan is very deep in the closet, and he's not used to having someone like Ravi who is so out and proud. His desk is covered in rainbow flags. And it kind of freaks him out a little bit because he's not out and proud like that. Unfortunately, this causes Ravi to think that Tristan is homophobic, which is really bad, because when Ravi yells at him and says it's if you're homophobic, just let me know and I'll make sure that we don't have to work together. And Tristan's like, I'm not homophobic, I'm gay too. And Ravi feels very bad about the fact that Tristan just outed himself to the company gossip. Yeah, it was a bad situation there. But the story turned out really well because it dealt with not only Tristan's family, who is part of a political family where they have the family first icon. So it's they believe in a traditional family, man and woman together. Then you have Ravi's family. He's Indian, and they have very traditional values as well. A lot of them don't accept Ravi as he is, but it's he's not going to change for them. And it's such a good book, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it was just so cute. I just remember reading Beta Test, and I'm like, oh. Next one I have is actually one that I've read twice this year because I loved it so much, and because I'm using it as kind of help for keeping me inspired for my vampire series, which is Cronin's Key by N.R. Walker. This is the first of her, can I call it a saga? Because technically the first 3 books are about Cronin and Alec, while the 4th one is about Kennard, which is a character you meet in book 1. But anyway, the 2 main characters, as I said, is a mortal cop named Alec McCabe. I think it's McCabe. But he ends up not only seeing a vampire basically turn to dust, but he was actually chasing one. And when he gets back to the precinct, this red-haired guy just shows up and all of a sudden he feels like he needs to go to him. This man is Cronin. Cronin is one of the older vampires in his coven, and he, along with his two good friends, E.G. and Jodis, are the three elders of their coven. And Cronin is Alec's fated one. And when I first started reading this, the one thing I was kind of put off a little bit, it's a little info dumpy. But considering the amount of information that normally needs to get out for a vampire novel, it's understandable. It's really hard to find those niches to be able to put that information in. So I understand it. It was info dumpy for the right reasons. But I loved Alec's sense of humor. And Cronin, he's been in this world for over a millennia, but he is so, like, he only knows what he needs to know. And there's a lot of things that he's like, it's hilarious. There's actually one scene where E.G. goes out to get food for Alec, because he actually eats. He comes back with, like, dried food, a can of baked beans, and I think, like, stuff that you could find in, like, a gas station kind of things. And it's like, did you, like, go shopping at a 7-Eleven? But it's really funny, and it's a slow burn because of the fact that apparently in their vampire culture, usually if a vampire has sex with someone, they will bite them. And if they bite them, they will either turn them or they will kill them. And I'm like, that sucks. That sucks really bad. So you don't actually get the smut until the very end, but you get a lot of unresolved sexual tension during the frickin' book. Ooh, it was like every 10 minutes or so during the book, they're having to deal with their attraction for each other, and apparently it is felt by every vampire in the room. And oh my god, E.G. is like my favorite. He's so funny. He's like, stop it, you guys are killing us here. The sexual tension needs to stop. It was so funny. I was like just dying laughing. The next one I actually got during my birthday book haul back in April. And this was an author that I hadn't really, like, heard a lot about. I heard a lot of people say that this was actually what introduced them to male romances. But I mostly got it because it's set in Vegas. And to find a male romance that is set in my hometown, I'm, like, all there. I'm all in. And it is Kill Game by Cordelia Kingsbridge. This is the first of her 7 of Spades series. I think there is 5 books. It deals with a detective named Levi and a private investigator named Dominic. Now, Levi has been searching for this serial killer called 7 of Spades, which is why the series is called that. And 7 of Spades goes after particular people that have committed a crime and have gotten away with it. And he always leaves behind a 7 of Spades playing card. And Levi has become obsessed with finding 7 of Spades. And he has tried so many times to find him. And he almost does multiple times, but he gets away. Dominic helps him out and not only is able to help piece together some things, but he's actually the reason that he's one of the reasons that Alec actually gets out of a really bad jam. And so is 7 of Spades. 7 of Spades actually sends Dominic to help Levi. And it was fantastic. I thought it was just the funniest thing. It's like, this almost feels like Batman and Joker, almost, minus the costumes and everything. But I have a theory of who 7 of Spades is. More than likely, I'm wrong, but it would make sense thematically. But I'm really hoping I'm wrong, because that would really suck. That would really, really suck. But I believe I ordered it on Amazon the sequel, which is Trick Roller. And I believe that's one of the books that I purchased. And I'm super excited and I want to read it so bad. I want to know what happens. The next book I wanted to talk about is actually one that came up after I read one of the worst books of this year. I know I mentioned in my most disappointing / worst about a book called On Point and how bad that was. And I almost gave up on reading Annabeth Albert for a while, but then when I got to this one, which was the following book, it is Wheels Up by Annabeth Albert. This one rejuvenated me. I was so happy to read this book because this one features I believe he is a lieutenant, Dustin Strauss, and how he starts a secret affair with Petty Officer Wes Lowe. Unfortunately, Wes is in his platoon, I think it is, and that's a big no-no. And even with my limited knowledge of how military structure works, I know that that's a no-no. And most of the time in Annabeth Albert's books, the tension and the conflict tends to come from sources where it's like, I could kind of understand, but most of the time it's like a couple of good conversations, maybe a little bit of finagling. You could get around it. This one, no. I understood exactly why they could not be together, but they were so drawn to each other from day frickin' one because they met through online chat. They met up. They had a date. They had incredibly kinky hot sex, and then they parted ways. Later, Dustin finds out he's getting a new platoon member, and it's Wes. And the one thing I loved about Wes and Dustin's relationship is that while Dustin is, if you were to look at them, Dustin is the stronger, more dominant looking one of them, while Wes is kind of tall, lanky, but he's still strong. You would think that Wes would be like the sub between them. Actually, it's Dustin. Dustin being a very mild-mannered person outside of the Navy, I felt so bad for him because he's so soft-spoken when he's away from like his platoon and everything. And Wes brings out his more submissive side, and it was so nice to see him when he was able to actually let that out, because I know that there's a lot of stigma against not being seen as masculine or not being seen as manly enough if you're the technical girl of the relationship, which I think is an asinine concept. It's like the point is that there's no girl. That's kind of the point of being gay. It's like I'm with a dude. Same thing with being lesbian. It's like there's no man in the relationship because that's kind of the point. But I know a lot of us have grown into those gender roles, and that's how we perceive it. And it was great to see Dustin, how he basically worked through his own issues of, it's like, I shouldn't be feeling this, but it makes me feel like me. And ultimately, he made the biggest sacrifice for just being himself. Because if you've never seen like military shows, the sentence or at least the problems that can come from a CO, or I think he's an XO, I don't remember which one he is, but basically a superior officer having a relationship with a petty officer, like they can't even be friends. Like they can't even have any kind of like hangout relationship. But to have an intimate relationship could get Dustin court-martialed and literally like ruin his entire life. And that's why I say that I understand his dilemma. And I really, really liked that not only was he having to find his way in his career, but also find the way to be happy with who he was. Wes's story was not as, like, touching to me because it kind of did come up towards the end, but it made sense with the way that Wes was. The next one that I wanted to talk about is actually one that I had on my list from when I started kind of looking into books, and I never gotten, like, any of the book or the audiobook until now. And that is Badlands by Morgan Bryce. This is about a medium slash psychic named Simon and a very jaded police officer named Vic. Now, Simon is like real deal medium psychic. He can speak to the dead, he gets visions, he literally is a professor of the occult almost, and he has a shop in Myrtle Beach, and he runs ghost tours, he sells occult artifacts, and he basically also is sort of like a, how would I put this? There's lots of fireworks going on now because I think it's midnight now. One thing I really liked about this story is the amount of occult knowledge that comes from it, because he kind of has what he calls a skeleton crew, because a lot of people that have similar gifts to him, and he's kind of like a mentor to them, they also work the night shift. And that's why he calls them the skeleton crew, because a lot of them don't want to sleep during the nighttime because bad things come out at night. While Vic has never truly believed in the occult until he has a run-in with a spirit. What happens is that in Philly, he was chasing down a suspect. Suspect grabbed a woman. Then all of a sudden, this green mist comes out of the man's body and goes into the woman. She proceeds to grab a gun and point it at him. Now, he just acted on impulse and shot her. And unfortunately, that nearly cost him his career. And when he goes to Myrtle Beach, where he's now been assigned, Simon not only picks up on the current case that he's working on, but he also picks up on that particular case. And it freaks Vic out something fierce, even though he has, like, started to kind of be attracted to Simon. But their relationship was so interesting, and a lot of the reviewers were like, this guy keeps getting himself into trouble, he's got no, like, sense of self-preservation, and I'm like, maybe this is why I like Nancy Drew, because she has no sense of self-preservation. Because literally he does the same things that Nancy Drew does, and I'm like, I can so understand you. And it's hilarious what he does to actually help solve the crime that's going on. And their love story is quite cute. But it is sort of a side thing to what's going on in Myrtle Beach. And it's a really, really good book. If you're interested in, like, learning some occult stuff, and to my knowledge, this is a series that is continuing with these two. I don't know how many books, but I'm kind of interested. The next one I'm going to talk about needs no real introductions because it is by my queen, Layla Rainey, and that is Cask Strength. I hope I pronounced that right, because my words are not coming out right. But this is actually the second book of the Agents Irish and Whiskey series, which features Aidan Talley and Jamie, I can never remember his last name. What is his name? Walker. I feel so horrible because I love Jamie. I'm so horrible. But anyway, this is the continuation from Single Malt, and they have started a bit of a relationship. Aidan and Jamie are both FBI agents. They've been partners now for, I think, about a year, something like that. I don't remember what the time frame was in Single Malt, and then to Cask Strength. But basically, they've now been partners for a while. And in the first book, they end up dealing with not only Aiden finding out that the car crash that killed his husband Gabe was not an accident, but also that Jamie is going to be helping him. Well, then fly over to Cask Strength. They're now kind of in a, I want to say fuck buddies relationship, because Aiden refuses to even try a relationship with Jamie because, of course, it's only been about a year since he lost his husband, and he's incredibly, insular. And Aiden has gone back to what is called his playboy ways, because he used to be a very love him and leave him kind of guy. He would basically screw any dudes that he could get to sit still long enough. And that's actually something that had stopped so that he could be with his husband. But now with Jamie, it seems like he's right back at it. And Jamie is not happy about this. This one deals with I think it's a college basketball in Charlotte, North Carolina, I think it is. And I think it's Jamie's alma mater, but don't quote me on that. But he goes there undercover as a new coach, and Aiden goes as his agent. And I have to say, to hide the role for Aiden, he actually had to re-dye his hair back to his natural red. Mind you, he's very much Irish. He has the Irish brogue when he lets it loose. Oh my god. Jamie had to go pick him up from the airport because Jamie showed up first and then his agent would come. Oh! when Aiden came into the airport, he had the Irish brogue full on, and he had the red hair, and Jamie's like, I don't know what to do with myself right now. But it was just fantastic. And this book also introduced one of my favorite characters from the Trouble Hop series, which is Nick. And Aiden actually dates Nick a little bit. And I'm like, Aiden, you dog! So that was was not expecting that. But it was interesting. I really love this one because of the kind of turmoil that gets brought up, especially about Jamie's past, and about why he left the NBA and went to Yale and hid out and then went to Quantico. It's so interesting to see the whys behind with Jamie, because while he is such an open person, there are certain things that he's held back, and it's understandable why. So that's why Cask Strength is on this list. Next one is actually a very recent read. I was honestly not sure if I was ever going to get to this one because the title did kind of sway me somewhat away. And that is The Weight of It All by N.R. Walker. Again, another N.R. Walker. You're going to see a couple of repeat authors here. But with this one, the title kind of says it all. It is about a man named Henry, and it is told entirely from his perspective, first-person perspective. Again, I'm trying to read more in first person, and sometimes it's a little weird. But it is told entirely from Henry's point of view. And after 8 years in the same relationship, Henry gets dumped by his longtime boyfriend. And his boyfriend, as a way to kind of stick a knife in it, says, "You're old and you're fat." Now, to put it into perspective, because this is set in Australia, everything is set by kilograms. But basically, he weighs about 274 pounds. And I'm like, I can relate. And I feel bad for him because when he hears the weight, he hyper focuses on that. And he kind of falls into a little bit of a depression. But then he decides, you know what? I'm going to go to a gym and I'm going to lose weight. So he goes to the gym and he meets Reed. Now, Reed is his personal trainer, and he literally describes him as looking hotter than Chris Hemsworth. And I'm like, ooh, that's a healthy comparison there. Ooh. Because Chris Hemsworth is one of my favorites from the Marvel universe. So, Reed is a cinnamon roll. He is so sweet, so kind, so caring. And literally from page 1, I could tell that he liked Henry. He loved the fact that he could make him laugh, that he was fun, that he had no filter, that he was so honest. And he starts working Henry and helping him to get into shape. And the reason that this book really stuck out to me, being someone of plus size, so I'm probably around the same weight as Henry was at the beginning of the book, Reed says something in the early parts of the book that really stuck out to me. He says, I'm going to weigh you, but after that, we're not going to focus on the numbers. All we're going to focus on is how you feel and how your clothes fit. And as someone who has always struggled with their weight, that's something that I always wish someone had told me. Because every person I've talked to, nutritionists, I've talked to personal trainers, I've talked to doctors, and even my own family who I've talked to about this, they always say it's like you'll see the numbers come down if you just change your calorie count. And that can be very detrimental because Reed says it perfectly. It's like you will see a difference in your clothes before you will see a difference on the scales. And that is so, like, I needed that. I needed to read that, and I literally went into this book thinking that it was going to be a very lighthearted read, but it touched me so much, and it actually has pushed me to try and get better, not only for my family and for my health, but also just for me, so I feel better. And my husband too. We've both been wanting to fix this. And it's because of Miss Walker's book that I have found a way that I could actually do that and feel good about it. So if you're watching this, NR, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Ooh, getting a little weepy. But yeah, this book, literally the only numbers that you ever hear are in the very beginning when Henry's being weighed for the first time. And then after that, you never hear about numbers. And it's just so great. Okay. Unfortunately, this is not the last time you're going to see tears, because the very next one is actually the one that made me cry for the first part of this year. And that is At Attention by Annabeth Albert. Again, another Annabeth Albert. This one is book 2 of her Out of Uniform series. And this one follows Lieutenant Apollo Flores and the brother to Dustin Strauss, Dylan. And in this one, Apollo 2 years prior had lost his husband. And that left him with 2 twin daughters, who were, I think, under the age of 5. I think they were. And he's basically raising them alone, dealing with working for the Navy, also dealing with severe back pain, and dealing with his mother as well, helping to raise the girls. And because he can't do it all himself, and even though he's very anal retentive, he gets Dylan to come and help him because he's in between jobs at this point and he needs some help. Dylan has always loved Apollo ever since they were teenagers, but he was always that like unattainable, my brother's best friend kind of status. And the story basically goes from there, where Dylan insulates himself in the family to the point where Apollo cannot function without Dylan being there to help him. But the entire time, the specter of Apollo's husband and his memories are always present with Apollo. And there's at one point, Apollo and he is cleaning up the bathroom of their clothes and everything. And he finds his ring, his wedding band, on the bathroom counter. And he's literally holding the ring as he's leaning against the wall. And he remembers something his mother told him, because his mother's also a widow, that sometimes she would just sit on her bed and talk to her former husband and basically tell him everything that was on her mind. And Apollo hasn't done this before, and he never knew that his mother did this. So in that bathroom, he decided to talk to him. And the line that always gets me is like something to this effect. Everyone expects me to be sad and upset that you're gone, and I am. But I'm more angry that you're gone and that you've left me here. And the reason that I tear up with this, because of the 7 years that I spent separated from my husband before we were married, was the hardest 7 years of my life, because there were so many times I wanted to tell him these things. And I wrote notes that said the most awful things. It's like that he made me angry, that every little bit of anger and rage that I had towards him. And everything that I said in those letters was literally a cry for me missing him. And I literally was listening to this while said husband was asleep. And I started crying because of how much Apollo's pain reminded me of the pain that I felt. And it had never been so succinctly put. And it was so touching to actually have this put in front of me. And I know he's going to be watching this, so he already knows that I'm a leaky faucet. So unfortunately, honey, I'm blasting this all over YouTube. Let's take a small little break and just say that I'm so happy to have been on YouTube now for a year, even though my filming schedule has been very inconsistent. And I thank all of my subscribers for being here, and I'm glad that you've stuck with me, even though I was very inconsistent with my filming. But now I've figured out what to do and how to do it. I'm quite happy with it now. Okay. The next one I want to talk about is actually one that I was super excited to get during my birthday book haul, which was Vance Sinister by KJ Charles. Now, Vance Sinister was one that when I first read the summary of it, I was like, sold. I was like, oh, this is about a guy named Guy Frisbee, literally Guy, and his sister Amanda, who live on the property that belongs to a lord. I think his name is Sir Philip Rookwood. And Rookwood apparently has a history with this family. His brother ran away with Guy and Amanda's mother and then got themselves killed. It was bad. But the problem is that stigma has kind of followed both families, both Rookwood and the Frisbee family. And what happens is that Amanda goes riding, and she ends up getting badly hurt on Rookwood's property. And Guy, wanting to protect his sister's good name, offers to stay with her at Rookwood's home. Unfortunately, because of the fact that he is known to have a club, what's called a gentleman's kind of club called the Murder. And apparently there's rumors of orgies and debauchery and just all this bad, sinful stuff going on in the Murder. And yeah, it's the furthest thing from what you would actually expect. And the reason that this book kind of made it to number 2 is because it did something that I was not expecting. And that was introducing a poly relationship. Because in here you have Rookwood, and then one of his best friends is Viscount Corvin. I don't remember what his last name is. And a former black slave who's also grown up with them, nicknamed Raven. You can see why it's called the Murder. Rookwood, Corvin, Raven. They're all names of blackbirds. And a group of blackbirds is called a murder. And the 3 of them are actually in a poly relationship before the book even starts. And you don't find that out until about halfway through. But Philip really starts to like Guy. And it actually turns out pretty well for them. And I'm quite happy with this because there was a lot of things going on in here that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to keep up with. But the pomp and circumstance with it, unlike with a couple of other books, I really enjoyed because the little bit that we got, it felt like it was necessary. And I love Philip because he is so sarcastic and just witty. I loved every time he spoke. Every time it's I knew there was going to be a quick quip or some little funny moment. It's the dry humor was all there for me. Now we are on to my 4 honorable mentions. This first one is actually a writing craft book, which is Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. If you've never heard of Save the Cat, the original one was written for screenwriters. And apparently it's the last book you will ever need on screenwriting. And what this does is that this version breaks down the 15 beats of a story and basically helps you to create not only engaging narrative, but good paced narrative. And I really, really enjoyed listening to this because what it does is it not only breaks down the beats, but it also breaks down what can be in the beats and then shows us examples of not only different genres, but also books that you can break the beats down and see exactly what they are and how they work. And I found so many great books that have interesting stories that I wanted to read. They have the beat sheet for The Help, Everything, Ready Player One, Misery. They have 20s Girl. They have Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone as one of theirs. And there's so many good stories in here that are broken down to their bare bones. And it's so helpful. And it has revolutionized how I've started drafting my books, or at least how I've thought about how the story should go. And it's so helpful. The next one that I have is actually one that I got during my birthday book haul, and I was kind of sad to find out that this was the author's only book, because she had actually a really good way of writing, and that is Shades of Grey by Brooke McKinley. No, it has nothing to do with 50 Shades of Grey. Thank God. This one follows a detective named Miller Sutton and Danny Butler. And basically Danny works for a drug lord named Heinz Stroza. And Miller wants to get Heinz Stroza behind bars. So what he does is he basically tries to force Danny to testify against him. Literally force. Basically gives him no choice. Unfortunately, because they have to wait until Heinz Stroza is actually on U.S. soil, they have to hide out for several months. And in that several months, they're hiding out together and they actually form a relationship. The only reason that this only made my honorable mentions is because, unfortunately, there is cheating. Because Miller is actually engaged to a woman, I think her name is Rachel. But it's obvious that the two of them do not match up well, but it's still no excuse for cheating. And that's why this is just honorable mention, because this was a good book, minus that little bit. The next honorable mention I wanted to talk about was actually one that I had found on Audible, on the Audible Escape. And it was one that I'm like, okay, this sounds interesting. I wasn't really expecting much. It was like an unexpected treat. And that is Takeover by Hazaaah. This follows the rather kinky adventures of Michael and Sam. Basically, in this one, Sam is what's kind of like dubbed a CEO fixer. He will become the CEO of a company that's failing and then decide whether or not he's going to save it or if he's going to just let it die. While Michael is he's an IT guy of this company that is needing of Sam's help. And he's actually a dominant personality versus Sam's submissive personality when it comes to the bedroom. And they are literally like two magnets. They cannot stop with each other. But there's a lot of secrets that Michael has that he holds on to very tight. And it's not until about 3/4 in that you actually find out what his secrets are. And I was honestly like just pissed off for him by what happened to him. And I didn't think that that was fair at all. So I'm glad that this is an honorable mention and that this surprised me. Last honorable mention, and the one that I said that I still have about 45 minutes left of the audiobook, is Crossroads by Riley Hart. Now, this is the only book that I can honestly recommend for people who not only like a gratuitous amount of smut, but also double gay for you. And normally I'm not a big fan of gay for you. It's very hit and miss for me. This is a definite hit because this follows a guy named Bryce and a guy named Nick. Nick is a chef while Bryce runs his own mechanic shop working on motorcycles. They are neighbors, and they've been neighbors for a little while. And after Nick gets a divorce from his longtime wife, he decides that he's gonna like try and make some friends, and he makes friends with Bryce. And from that point on, they literally spend almost every day with each other, and it is so interesting to see their relationship build and build and build until they're realizing it's like, I actually have feelings for you. They've never had feelings for men before, which is where the gay for you kind of comes in. And a lot of people around them say it's like, well, how can you think that you're gay if you've never had feelings for another man before? And I'm like, there is such a thing as not having feelings for someone until you have a very strong connection. I think it's demisexual. But that's neither here nor there. But so far, I'm like right at the end, and I am super excited about getting to that last point. I know it's going to be marked that I finished it January 1st, but I'm happy about that. It's January 1st, and I'm already finishing a book. But not as happy as I am with my number one pick. And if you are at all a veteran of my channel, you should probably be able to guess what this book is. And that is Noble Hops by Layla Rainey, my queen. And this is the third and final book of the Troubled Hops series. This follows the romance between Nick and Cam. as they deal with a man from Nick's past, well, more like his father's past, and dealing with the fallout of Nick's family. And ultimately, I'm all for spoilers, but because this is the third one, I'm going to keep some of the spoilers a little bit back, but ultimately, there was a guy who was mentioned way back in Agents Irish and Whiskey, and I just knew that this guy was no good. Like, literally, the minute he showed up on the page, I'm like, you're an asshole, you're gonna be a bad guy. Guaranteed. And I was right. I was so right. I'm like, you dirty. You so dirty. I knew it. I was like so proud of myself. Because normally I'm not right. But this was the first time I had actually ever been correct when it came to deducing whether or not someone was a bad guy or not. And this one had so many twists and turns with it, much like Barrel Proof did for Agents Irish and Whiskey. And oh my god, I loved it. I literally marathoned it in one day. Oh, it was so good. I literally got both the audiobook and the ebook when they came out, because of course the ebook came out first. Oh, so good. So good. It was like the best. I loved it so much. I had that shit on pre-order the minute I finished the second book. It was so good. Mostly because I love Nick and I love Cam, and their romance actually tops out Aiden and Jamie's because of what they go through together. And the fact that even though Nick is kind of reserved a lot of the time, he didn't have the same reservations that Aiden did. And I think that's what made me love Nick and Cam a lot more than Aiden and Jamie, even though Jamie is like bae for me. But I loved their story, and I was so happy to see the ending and see how it progressed. And I'm really hoping that we get more from them. I doubt it, because I know that Layla has just finished her Fog City series, which I've held off. I'm waiting for the third book's audio so that I can marathon that, because that was a long time waiting from craft brew all the way to Noble Hops. That was a long wait, and I was not appreciative of the wait. I'm not a patient soul. Anyway, so those are my top picks for 2018 and 2019. And I thank you all for sitting through these 3 videos. I know it's probably a long time since the first of the year, but I hope to have these out pretty soon. I don't know when this one's going to go up. I just know how I am when it comes to editing, and it might take me a while. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.